What's stopping you taking your next big leap? What's making you think, oh, I shouldn't? Are you sticking in a toxic work environment? Are you staying put because your fear is saying, oh, I've got it good here. I should stay put. Today, I'm talking to Mary Rombaut about taking big leaps, about taking on, in her case, an awful lot in a very short amount of time. She is an entrepreneur who is doing two, not one, but two big things alongside being a mom of three under fives, all within 12 months. This is an episode for you if you are questioning, what should I be doing next? If you are saying, I'd love to do that, but I don't know if I should. This is an episode full of questions to ask yourself, to say, what if? To go, what would I do if I did that? And to ask yourself very seriously, what's stopping you? So without further ado, let's get Mary onto the show. Welcome to the show, Mary. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Toni.
Well, let's kick off the way I love to kick off. Tell us about your life, your career to date, how you got to where you are, what you're doing, and how you're changing the world in your own little way.
Sure. So I came from very humble background. My family, I grew up very poor. And I think that's important to note because it really drove me in a lot of ways and continues to drive me. I started my way towards higher education, not having anybody to look up to in that way, and also having kind of overcome a lot of childhood struggles in terms of my brother almost died from a rare disease. My father had a brain tumor. So, a lot of things that were driving me towards, being perseverance and just growth. And so when I got to higher education, I honestly did not know. I knew I was going there and I knew it was the path towards stability. So I graduated a year early from high school. I went to college not even having my financial aid in place, but I was like, I'm going to do this. And I did, worked 3 jobs, got through it, and then went to grad school thinking I was going to be a professor. That was like the original goal. And then while I was working on my PhD in political science, I found out I had a brain tumor. Thankfully, it was not cancer, but it derailed me a little bit. I stopped with the master's degree and then I ended up working in higher education in administration using my research skills, analytic skills. And that really brought me to the first part of my career where I learned about strategic planning and how to run an organization through mission, vision, goals. And I ended up leaving higher ed and I know you've got that shared background of starting up in higher education, just due to the environment. I found it very toxic. And even though I worked at several different institutions, it just wasn't the right environment for me. So I made the switch. It was very hard for me to give it up too, because I'm a very mission-driven person and I wanted to give back to students that I felt like were like me. But I've since found that there's other ways to do that. You don't have to be in education to make a difference. Anyway, so I moved into the for-profit sector in analytics research and slowly started making my way towards marketing. And I always had an interest in marketing. I ended up going to an agency that I learned so much from as their head of analytics. And eventually moved into a small business where I had the opportunity to be their head of research, marketing, and strategic planning and scale them from, a $3 million company to close to a $10 million company. So it was such a learning experience for me and really planted the seed of, okay, maybe I could have my own small business. If I could grow this small business, maybe I could do it for me. What do I want that to look like? So that's really where that seed was sown. And last year, I had my third child. I have 3 kids, 5 and under. And I made a switch to another agency. And it turned out to be, in many ways, a blessing, which I can talk about a little bit later because of how it got me to where I am right now. But it was also just a horribly toxic environment for me and for everybody there, to be honest. And that pushed me to then say, you know what, it's time. Part of it is it's time now to start your dream of your own agency and startup. And that's so late last year, I made the move to starting my own agency, R Squared Solutions. And then also at the same time, as if that wasn't enough, I started a startup called Recommenda, which has the goal of helping entrepreneurs, small business owners, and marketers make smarter marketing technology investments.
Wow, when we met and first chatted about this, I had not realized the timeline there. I had not realized that R Squared, which is already incredibly successful, is actually brand new as well, and that you did it at the same time as Recommender. I had not twigged that. That is extraordinary, and a certain level of determination goes into that, right? And I don't think it is a normal level of determination. Or maybe common is the right word. Maybe normal is a bad choice, but common. What belief do you have in yourself right now? I do not want to be the person who drops your belief. Absolutely not. But that's an incredible amount of self-belief that's gone into that, and something we should all actually be aiming for in my mind. What questions were you asking yourself? What mindset was there going into this?
Such a great question. I think that I had been heading towards it for several years. So I did start R Squared a couple of years ago, but very shortly after got pregnant with my third child and then shelved it. You know, I just was like, okay, I started it, but now's not the right time. But the seed was there. And it was more about looking for that right timing, looking for that push towards, stepping out of my comfort zone and when is the right time. And I think that's an important question that entrepreneurs or, future CEOs have to ask themselves. What is the right time to do this? And at the end of the day, there is never a right time. You kind of have to make the time, but often there's a catalyst. And for me, that was, having 3 children under 5, where I was trying to figure out, how do I be the best mom? How do I be the best employee and wife, taking care of myself? All these things that honestly, last year, I felt like I was failing in, to be brutally honest. I felt that I was failing in all areas of my life because I didn't have the flexibility to show up when I needed to.
Mm.
So, it took sitting down with my husband and saying, like, is this the time? And he said, he pushed me and said, I believe in you. Let's do this. In our vows, when we got married, he said, I promise to stand by you while you kick ass and take names in your career. And that meant so much to me because he knew how important that having a career was going to be for me. And that push, I have to say, looking for that flexibility and that belief in me and that investment in me from the person who I go to the most for that support, really helped push me to it.
That's extraordinary. I think having that partner who goes, you're important and I'm going to make sure that you get the career that you want. I do see that as a commonality. I don't think it's required for us to be successful. And so anybody who's not feeling that support, it doesn't stop you. But I do think having somebody who goes, and yes, you can, and doesn't just say that, but puts their actions where their words are by actually supporting you. I think when you have that momentary, should I do this? It can make such a difference.
And that's a great point because it could be a friend. My husband was very, very instrumental in R Squared, but it was a friend who really believed in Recommenda. And she's the one that said, I'm going to help you with this. Like, what do you need me to do to help you get it off the ground? And she believed in that idea, and it would not have come to fruition without her. So that person absolutely can be a mentor, a friend, a family member. It does not have to be a significant other.
Well, let's backtrack a few moments, probably maybe years. and talk about that toxic work environment, because that's obviously an important catalyst for you. And I hear so many women putting up with toxic work environments. I did this for a long time and I didn't realize how toxic it was until I got out. The turning point for me was realizing that it wasn't normal to be physically ill every morning from stress. Like, that shouldn't be normal. It took leaving to appreciate that, which is, the benefit of hindsight is mind-boggling. But it's one of the things that drives me today, that why I'm so passionate when I see a woman in a toxic environment, of helping them see that. So what advice would you give to a woman who's feeling stuck? They are in a toxic environment. Maybe they are afraid to take a leap. Maybe like you and me, there is this element of, but I'm in a mission-driven organization and that's important. How can I make a change if I'm not here? Like, what should we be considering to help us see that the workplace is the thing really holding our ability to change the world back?
Absolutely. I think that fear is the barrier there, right? When you're in, oftentimes we know we're not in a good situation, right? Like you said, when you get up in the morning and you're not excited to go to work, or you're not feeling like you're learning and growing, we know it. Sometimes we have to push it down, but we usually know it. And I think it's oftentimes rooted in fear of giving up financial security, fear of, is the next job could be worse than what I'm in now? At least, the devil is the devil, right? And I think that one of the things about me that I believe in leaning into fears, that you find tremendous growth when you face your fears head on and don't allow them to own you and hold you back. And that is hard. That is not something that I've always been good at. Sometimes facing those fears takes years. But I think that trying to find support within your network is first and foremost, sometimes what you need. Someone who just says to you, this isn't okay. You can do so much more at a new organization or at your own organization. You have to let go of that fear of failure. And, depending on how long you've been at the organization, I've been in situations where I knew pretty quickly it wasn't the right fit for me. Like, this is what happened last year. I've never been at a job for only 6 months in my life. Like, there's a lot of people out there. There's a stigma around, well, you have to be, you need that 3 years on your resume or else you look like a failure. And I completely disagree with that. The failure is giving a company years and years of your life when they don't deserve it.
I also feel very strongly, just touching on that, like, failure is giving years of your life to a company doesn't deserve it. I feel very strongly that when we stay somewhere because we believe in the mission, or we want to protect our team, is a very common one I get. Like, if I leave, what about my team? We are propping up financially something that is wrong. And I really think we need to take that to heart. If we're staying and making something work, even though it's toxic, we're supporting toxicity. And we're helping them make money off the back of that toxicity, because we're saying, I'll stick it out anyway. Just because somebody's got an important mission. And I've worked with people in nonprofits enough to know a lot of nonprofits are actually quite toxic because of the way they operate. I'm not saying all are, haven't even worked close to enough to know that. But a lot that bear in mind that there's a self-selecting audience that comes and works with me. They're toxic, but people will stay because they believe in the mission. I'm like, just because they've got a great mission doesn't mean they have an excuse for treating human beings badly. In fact, I would argue that if you've got a great mission, you have an even bigger purpose to do it right, deliver that mission in an ethical way. How do you feel about that? Like, obviously, there's something that's really a bee in my bonnet, but I'd love your take on that.
I completely agree with you. And as I said earlier, that I've learned I can give back to that mission-driven part of me in other ways, during that. It doesn't mean it has to be my full-time job. R Squared Solutions serves nonprofits. That is a huge important thing to me, that being able to provide nonprofits marketing that they absolutely need and usually don't have at a cost affordable, making it cost affordable for them is very important to me. But then I also have other nonprofits that I just do pro bono work for and whatnot. So there are ways to serve that nonprofit mission driven part of you that don't include giving your soul to an organization that is not feeding it and nurturing it.
Mm-hmm. I think that's so important to recognize in ourselves that there are other ways of fulfilling that personal need for changing the world, right? Which brings me to Recommenda. So you hinted there that Recommenda was something that you needed to create. Where did that come from? Why do a startup and a consulting firm all at once? Like, what's going on there? Where's your head at? And why a startup of all things?
Yes. So, part of me, I measure some of my success in impact, right? How much impact can I have on organizations? And, as a single employee of an organization, I was only impacting that organization. Or with my marketing company, I can only help so many organizations. I'm driven to help if you haven't figured that out yet. And for Recommenda is that outlet for me to serve a need that I think impacts every single company on this planet, which is making wrong marketing technology investments. I've made them myself. I've made them for organizations. And I've been on the other end of it where I've made the right ones and seen the success that comes from it. And I see marketing technology is also a huge barrier to entry for a lot of entrepreneurs. You're a specialist in your skill set. And that day you step out and say, I'm an entrepreneur, I am a CEO, you have just become your marketing department, your accounting department, your IT. You are everything in one moment, which is so scary, but so exciting. And I want to help those people be able to go somewhere. My tool is free, and you're able to go to it and say, all right, this is what I'm trying to do. This is who I am. And it will give you that short list of marketing technology to go evaluate. And you still get to make the decision which one is right for me, but it's pointing you in the right direction at least. And hopefully giving you the confidence to then go do it and bring your idea to life.
Yeah, I love that. Like you are everything as an entrepreneur. And I think that's something that's very scary. And so many of my entrepreneurial friends who don't have a tech background just were terrified at the beginning. I remember at the beginning, like helping so many people with like their websites, just what I review is fairly basic stuff because it comes so easily to me. The one thing I outsourced from day one was my accounting. I just don't want to have anything to do with like the legal side. I can do basic bookkeeping. I do not want to file tax returns. No, I just don't. But there's so many things. And as you say, it's a huge barrier for a lot of entrepreneurs. And I think it's one of the things that makes us feel scared. So let's talk into these challenges of being everything in startup mode, because I know many listeners have this dream of building their own business. I get CEOs on every now and then to talk about it. So many of the leaders I'm working with, extraordinary women, say to me, ultimately, I know I'm in corporate and I'm doing well, I'm making lots of money, but ultimately I want to be running my own thing. And when I dig into the fear, there's two pieces of fear. There's the money fear, and then there's there's just so much. And I think a large part of that is having to do everything. So
absolutely,
where do we start? How do we balance that need that like there's so much you're not going to know? How do we deal with that?
Absolutely. I think taking a step back at first and saying, outside of the fact that you're starting this new thing, you are still all the things in your life. You are a friend, a partner, a mother, you've got all of these different hats, right? And I think as women, it can be very, very challenging on the daily to figure out how to wear all of those hats, right? Mm-hmm. And, time management just in general is so important. Figuring out where to put your priorities, making sure you have that vision and goals that you're working towards at any given time. And as I said, last year I hit rock bottom in terms of I felt like I was failing everywhere. And then I started 2 companies. So on top of all of that, but honestly, that propelled me to say, okay, how do I best use my time? You give up, you don't do your accounting. But for me, like taking a step into my life, one of the things that I hate doing is grocery shopping. It just brings me down. I
Yeah.
hate spending that time when I could be doing other things. So you
Uh-huh.
know what? I use Instacart and I let someone else do my grocery shopping for me. That's an investment I make because it does not serve me and it brings me down. And you have to be able to find those moments strategically. And I think another thing is saying when you're trying to wear all those hats as a new business owner, you're not going to do them all well in any given moment, any hat you're wearing. And as a high achiever in school, I always wanted that A. And what I've found is I cannot give an A to everything every day.
No.
So I sit down in the morning and I say, today I'm going to be an A mom and an A business owner. And I'm going to give myself an F in home care. My house is going to look like a tornado. And I have to be okay with that because I need to be an A in these other two areas of my life today. And I do that with my business too. Today I'm going to have deep work for my clients. I can't think about Recommenda. I have to do deep client work today. Recommenda gets an F, but tomorrow Recommenda gets the A and everybody, so I try to think of it for me in that A, B, C, D, E, F, and hopefully it all balances out. But if you kind of keep track of it and are able to say, okay, where have I been slacking off because I had to do these other things? Where have I been giving the F's to? Okay, now let me make some time for that.
So here's the thing. As a coach, I can't help but jump on this. What what would it take to bring your B game to any of those things you said A for? In particular, here's the one that's going to push buttons for maybe you, maybe listeners. What would it take to bring your B game or even your C game to being a mom for a day?
Oh, that happens all the time. It happens all the time.
I love it.
Week, I went on for my first time. I went to an event in the evening. And so that meant I worked during the day. I saw my kids briefly. I picked them up from grandma's. I was able to spend a little time with them, but then I handed them off to their other grandma and their dad. And so I felt like, today is a C day as a mom, right? It was hard for me, but I had a nonprofit event to go to. It was really important to me. And I was in this very deep conversation with a woman who started a nonprofit for women with disabilities, empowering them. She's amazing. I was knee deep in this conversation with her. And I see on my watch, my husband texts me, SOS, Sienna won't go to sleep without you. And I said to her, you know what? I have to leave. I have to get home to her. I've been here for a few hours. And she's like, no problem. We will pick this up when it's the right time for you. And on the way home, before I started driving, I got on my son's, the camera in their room. I talked to them. I said, good night, boys. I love you. And that was my little way of connecting to them before they went to sleep. But at the end of the day, I did what I could. And then I left and I went home. But I prioritized work that day and I tried to balance it as best I could. And I don't regret it at all because
I love that. You don't regret it.
I made such great connections that are going to hopefully I can help them.
Well, also here's the thing. I think sometimes we don't see, and it's really emotionally charged, I think, being a parent. But sometimes prioritizing work is actually such a good thing for your kids. One, it's going to make them more self-reliant. Maybe, when they're very tiny, that's a bit harsh. I don't know. Like, when's the right time? I'm not a parenting coach. Don't want to answer that question. But at the same time, they're also going to see a driven entrepreneurial mother who is showcasing women can do all these amazing things, whether you've got boys or girls or both in your case. That is an important, powerful message that says you can balance, or rather, it's not wrong to balance. And so I think is actually, although in that moment it's very hard, it's maybe very instructive, is my personal take on it. And I say that's a trade-off in every single time we bring our B game or C game or even our F, right?
Absolutely.
If you bring your C game to something because you can just do it, it doesn't need your A game. That's exactly the best use of your time in that moment, right?
Absolutely. And I think oftentimes we as women deprioritize ourselves because that's the easiest thing for us to deprioritize, right? Our health, exercising. That's something I did for a long time. And what I realized was, oh my goodness, if I'm not taking care of myself, how can I take care of everybody else? And you know what? It's still a daily struggle for me. But I actually hired a coach to help me prioritize it. That's what I needed. But that I think is very important to address, because if you are a CEO, if you're about to take the leap, please make sure to continue to prioritize your own health, because you are only as good as how healthy you are inside and out.
I see that one time and time again with the entrepreneurs I am around, the ones who thrive and go on to do great things, they prioritize themselves. I don't think that's selfish. I think society tells us as women it's selfish. But I actually think you can only show up for your kids, for your family, for your business, for your team, for everybody around you if you are in a good place. It's the whole put your own face mask on first. Otherwise, you're not going to be here to help, right?
Totally. And you're setting the example, especially if you lead a team, at the work. That's so important to me. One of the things I want to create with my companies is an environment where my team has the same flexibility that I have as the CEO.
Yes.
I want them to feel that on any given day, they can be the person they need to be, and the work will still be there. I will still be there to support them, because that is so freeing. It helps you do your best work when you've got a sick child or whatever the situation is. You truly feel like in that moment you can own the role you need to do, versus how I felt at my previous organizations, where I'm trying to work. I've got a sick kid, I'm trying to do all these things at the same time and then feeling like I'm not doing any of them well. I want to do the exact opposite for my teams and set the example that taking care of yourself and owning your roles is very important. And I value it.
Yeah, I love hearing that story, because it's kind of the mission I'm on is to not just elevate the tech industry by helping women be better leaders and hopefully create some startups as well, but also to demonstrate you can be a for-profit company that's ethical, has a great workplace for your team to be in. They have the flexibility that a lot of us as entrepreneurs are craving. They have that, but you can still make money. You can still be a great business and ethical and taking care of your team. They aren't mutually exclusive. And I think so much of our society says those two things are mutually exclusive, and they really are not, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you, Toni.
Well, one of the things I want to make sure we dig into before we wrap up is about asking for help. Because I know one of the things you said to me was you found it hard to ask for help, but you know that asking for help has got you better results. So tell us a little bit more about that. Like, why is asking for help so important in our life, careers, and in your case, entrepreneurship?
Going back to that fear of failure, I really saw asking for help for a long time as a weakness, as an example of failure. If I needed to ask for help, I was the person that everybody came to for help. I'm a problem solver by my personality. I am that person my friends and family come to. So it was hard for me to kind of switch it around and say, you know what, if I'm going to be successful, I'm going to need to ask for help, whether it's for childcare or for things I don't know how to do in my business. And I think that it kind of goes back to that leaning into fear and I also truly believe in continuous improvement. It is the fabric of my life. And as a CEO, I really encourage everybody to lean into that, because the moment you think you know everything, the moment that you stop growing is the moment that your idea dies, because you need to continue to keep that open mind of how can I be better? How can I make this organization better? How can I make my product better? How can I make my team better? What is it that the steps you need to take to achieve that? And when you fear asking for help, you're closing off that ability to be better. And that's what I realized, that my whole way I look at the world, I was applying, I was closing off to myself in this way. And I started asking friends, how can I make this what if this product was yours, what would you do with it? Just getting ideas from them. And, there's so many different aspects of my life where I feared asking for help. And now I couldn't do it without all my village with my family, my village with my team. And what I found was every time I asked for help, I received it in tenfold, way more than I could have ever imagined. And it was so empowering. Then it made me want to help people back. And, you only have so much time, but that's, I think, one of the exciting things about entrepreneurship is how many doors open for you that people will give to you, and you're able to give back to them as well, if you're just willing to ask.
It's that being willing to ask, isn't it? I think that gets in our way so much of the time. I've one final question before we move on to the quickfire round, which I really want to ask you. If we got someone listening who has a dream to do the next big thing in her career, whether it's starting out on her own or it's taking that next big leap professionally, they have a dream, but they feel they don't have the skills, resources, confidence, whatever it is to take action. What would you say to that woman listening?
That I was you last summer. One of the things holding me back, that even though I was in marketing, I did not know how to build a website on my own. I always had a team to do that for me. And I didn't know search engine optimization, which is also very important. And I didn't know how to do it on my own. I was working with a client kind of on the side, and she wanted me to build her website. And she introduced me to a platform I had never heard of. And I was like, I used it and I was like, wow, I can build a website in this. And this is kind of also what sparked Recommenda. I was like, wow, I did not even realize there was this technology out there where people like me who have no web design skills can go out there and program. Like, you don't need to be a programmer.
Yeah, they're so amazing now, some of the stuff out there for building websites. It makes it so easy. Yeah.
Right. But even I was a marketer and did not realize that those existed. So that fear, whatever it is that you think you can't do, I encourage you to, now I feel like it's a strength of mine because I've learned it and I invested the time in SEO and in website building, and whatever you think you're not good at now, you can be. Even if it seems scary, you can learn it, and you can learn it as you go. Like a lot of us, that's what we're doing. We have a lot of skills, but like we're learning the other parts as we go. And where you can't learn, there's people, there's contractors, there's friends, there's people who can help you while you're getting your footing.
Yes. So powerful. There's always, I think sometimes it's about getting out of our own way a little bit and getting out of our own head and taking action and realizing it's not as scary as we think it is. And that, comes down to the asking for help or just trying something and not being scared. I would say as an entrepreneur, I'm not scared of anything anymore. That's not quite true, but a lot less. I think the thing that's hardest for me now, several years down the road, is like figuring out how best to spend my time. But I think early on it is about going, I can give this a go. What's the worst thing that can happen, right?
Absolutely.
I love it. Let's move on to the quick fire round. My all-time favorite question kicks us off, which is, what is the worst piece of advice you've ever been given?
Easy. To stay in a toxic job because of the stability it provides.
Oh,
Hands down, the money. Obviously, we all need to make a living. We need money to survive. But feeling like the benefits that you have, whether they're monetary or flexibility. In my case, I had flexibility in my long-term job that, for a time, my husband was like, are you really going to give up that flexibility for, and I'm like, I'm giving it up for the ultimate flexibility. But yeah, especially in terms of finances, it's not worth it to stay in that.
It's really not. But society tells us it's not worth the risk. And I think it's so good that you've called that out, because I hear this so often of don't give that up. There are times to be prudent about how and when you give it up, but staying put just because is not a good thing to be doing.
Absolutely.
What is the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
So before I met my husband, I was actually married. And when I left higher education, and in terms of blowing up my career in one sector, I also blew up my life because my amazing partner at the time, he is truly an amazing person, didn't want to have children. So we parted ways. But his parting words to me, and he's actually still my good friend, so it's not truly parting, but he said to me, if there's anyone on this earth that deserves to have everything they want in life, it's you. And that has truly fueled me since that part of my life ended, in terms of if I was going to cause so much pain and go off in this new direction, I had to be always making decisions that I felt were worth it to have made that sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
And I am truly driven by, I want to achieve my goals and I want to give my family the best that I possibly can and all the things that I didn't have. And I think that every woman listening today, you deserve to have everything you want in life. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but be moving in those directions.
Mm-hmm. I love that so much. That's beautiful. What is the last book you read and would you recommend it?
I'm about to finish The 6 Wives of Henry VIII, and I loved it.
Oh, wow.
It's a good one.
There's a story that I think that at some point we're going to have a kind of a realignment of our history of Henry VIII. I think it's coming.
Yes.
How can people connect with you, find out more about what you're doing in both of your businesses? Where can we find you online?
Yes. So I do have a new YouTube channel called, the handle's Your Recommenda. And we look at different marketing technology tools and I give my honest thoughts and feedback on them. You can also find me on LinkedIn, at my websites. You can email me. I'm happy to connect in any way.
We will make sure links to all of that are in the show notes. If you're listening and you want to go check out what Mary is doing, then go look at the show notes, get all those links. I'll also make sure the link to her book her book recommendation is also in the show notes. So go check that out. Mary, this has been incredible. You're an inspiring woman. I had not appreciated when we first chatted that your journey has been this fast. You just have blown my mind with that. I feel like there's so much that people don't even understand how far you've come so quickly. It's extraordinary. So with that in mind, what final thoughts do you want to leave everybody with today?
To fall into your fears. That's what I want you to take away today, that your fears, you have to own them. You have to acknowledge them. But the sooner you start falling into them, the growth and the amazing achievements are really going to start.
I love that as a final note here, because I think today is really about understanding what might be stalling you, what might be holding you back. And I would say a huge part of it for most of us is some form of fear. It's a huge part of the work I do as a coach. I think as a leadership and executive coach, my job is to help people be better leaders. But the starting block always is digging through what's stopping you doing the obvious. So falling into your fears, building your confidence by taking action that's uncomfortable so that you then have proof to your own brain that you are able to do this is the best way to move forward. So whether you're a leader listening to this, wondering, do I take that next job? Is it time to quit and do my own thing? Do I become an entrepreneur? Or do I go for that promotion? Do I push my way into that room and start having that conversation? I want you to know you can do this. You can take action. And the best way to do that is to move forward deliberately, with authority, with intention. You will be okay with whatever happens. So thank you for listening. Go off and fall into your fears, everybody.